Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Nick Mitchell from Simulator Air Tanker Operations, and I want to welcome you to episode 5 of the brief series. Now, it's been quite a while since I did an update brief, as there's not been much going on, despite the COVID-19 stuff, and I've been busy with other projects, but I have started to get back into the air tanker modifications. If you've been following the page, you can see that there's been some more progress on some of the models being made. And as you can see in front of me here, I have one of the new releases from Virtavia. Virtavia recently remastered their P-2 Neptunes and released them for FSX and P3D. The big news is, as you can see, in this new remastered package, they included air tanker versions. Now their air tanker version comes with 2 repaints, 2 models for Minden Air Corps. It would be Tanker 55 and Tanker 48. This paint job here is one I'm working on for, obviously, Neptune Aviation. I am working on a series of repaints and modifications for it because, to be honest with you, when they say remastered, remastered really just meant to them that they just kind of updated it for P3D and FSX. They changed very, very little with it, aside from adding, obviously, the air tanker models. But some of the modifications I'm looking at actually making the Neptune 4 engines, which, as you can see, the Neptune does have 4 engines. It has 2 piston engines and 2 J34 turbojets on the wings. So in the original aircraft CFG files for this, including the one all the way back when Virtavia was still Alpha Sim, their version still only operated on just the 2 radial piston engines. They didn't code anything in for the jets. So I have a way around that of kind of modifying the aircraft CFG to make it so that the Neptune actually has 4 engines. That also incorporates the fact that I have custom sounds that I have made for it that I think justify the awesome nature that the Neptune actually has with the way its engines are configured. Obviously, it's got the giant R3350s plus the J34s, and when they're everything's at full power. That's a pretty unique noise, which I don't think any of these Neptunes I've seen out ever justify. How cool the Neptunes actually sound when they're under full power. So those are some modifications I'm looking at doing. Jeremy, our modeler, he also has the Neptune, and he's been talking about doing some other custom paints and maybe updating them to PBR, because these models do not have PBR, which would allow them to work or appear much better than they do in P3D, because honestly, there's not much aircraft detail with these. It's literally just drawn on through the textures. There's not a lot of actual 3D detail to the model, and Jeremy's talking about adding rivets and real things that make the airplane stand out more, and then obviously using PBR, the shading that version 4.5 and version 5 use for P3D makes the aircraft pop more, makes it look more realistic. So that, however, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to publicly release that or not. He did mention it to me in passing when I talked to him recently, but in terms of the public release, I am planning on doing a repaint pack for this, as well as the modifications. One of the other modifications that I'm adding is I'm adding a payload station, because the one that comes with this does not have a payload station. So the flight dynamics on this are basically a super light Neptune. No payload equipped or anything, so it has what I would consider a floaty type flight dynamic nature, which I don't particularly like. So adding some weight to it actually nullifies that floaty nature, and I've experimented with it so far, and it does fly a little more realistically. My power modifications, though, I still need to fix, because with it being 4 engines, the power scaler is obviously off, so I need to make that more realistic. But as far as that goes, the Neptune that they did, the air tanker versions, they're halfway decent looking. I mean, minus those other things. I am adding a smoke effect to the J34s when they're under full power, because they do smoke a bit. They are older turbojet engines. They do smoke a bit when they're under full power. when they're under power with them. So I'm adding that to this as well. I think that's it as far as in terms of modifications for this. Some of the other aircraft I'm going to mention in this video is I did a miniature overhaul as be last night on the Bell 412s, and if you saw the update on the page last night, I went from the 2 models I was going to release to 5. So I've made a significant number of changes to the 412s, adding basically more options to them, essentially, that made them differentiate that many more extra models. So I'm going to go over those changes in this, as well as just basically a texturing update on the DC-10s and how the development is going for that. So my primary update process for this video is basically to just address some of the new stuff that's coming out, and then the aircraft models themselves, because I've had a number of these models that I've had in model conversion limbo, if you will, where I've worked on them for months and they really just kind of sat, and then I would just take on more repaint projects and kind of shelve them and then come back to them. And I figured it was time, after this hiatus that I had for during this whole COVID-19 deal, that jumping back into them and actually finishing all these and releasing them was something that I needed to do. So the first up, I'm pretty sure the Bell 412s will be done before the DC-10s. And if you saw the miniature update I did on the 412s a few days ago, video update, they will be released this month. And after I clean up some of these files and finalize any of the additional modifications I'm doing to them, they will be done. So yeah, so we'll go ahead and switch over to the DC-10s, and then the last aircraft we'll look at in this update video will be the 412s. I know people are probably tired of seeing them, but those will be the next things that we look at, or the last thing we look at. Alright, so here we are in DC-10. This is the Dash 30 model. Now I have Tanker 910 pulled up here. 910, I'm just using this as a base right now because I am including all the Dash 30 versions that 10 Tanker Air Carrier currently has in service, which they have 4 DC-10s in service. So that would be Tanker 910, 911, 912, and 914. Those liveries will be included, as well as 2 additionals of Tanker 910. So this is obviously the base and current paint job Tanker 910 is in. I will also be including the original DC-10-10 version, which was the first converted VLAT. It's now, or first converted DC-10 VLAT. That airframe has now been retired, and the Dash 30 Tanker 910 replaced it several years ago, which is this model here. But the original Tanker 910 was a Dash 10 model. That livery essentially is not really a whole lot different, except for the markings up here, and on the engine fairings have CAL FIRE, because CAL FIRE originally was the first contracted operator of the DC-10. So I am including that version, as well as the other Dash 30 model of Tanker 910 will be painted in New South Wales Rural Fire Service contract livery. So if you saw the update on the page a few days ago, I did point that out, that livery is now complete. So our Australian neighbors down there that use the VLATs during their fire season will have an option to, fly one of the contract versions, contract livery versions, or one of these standard livery paint jobs. Now, in terms of development, these are mostly done. There are some small model issues that I still need to work out with the Dash 30s, as well as I think there's a few on the Dash 10, but they're relatively small, and I'm just kind of waiting until the Bell 412s are complete before I really dive more into messing with the models on these. But other than that, these are, I would say, 90% complete. The 412s are more like 95%. Really, what I need to be done with those is, file cleanup and finalization of liveries, and making sure that I didn't miss anything or changing anything. Basically the small stuff that takes a lot of the extra time to do. Because I'm pretty sure most of the modeling is done. But like this with the DC-10s, the modeling is for the most part done. It's just, like I said, cleaning up the small things, and then, you know, be cleaning them up and getting them ready to get released. The retardant effect is complete on this. As you saw in that one video I posted several weeks back, it has a long drop retardant effect that essentially, if you were to hit the smoke key, whatever your smoke key is, it essentially would do a full, what's considered a full length drop for this platform. So obviously, if you're doing a partial drop or whatever else, you know, you can obviously simulate that by hitting the I key and cutting it off by doing a partial drop, you know, etc. And obviously, if you go to use any of these models that I'm talking about, you know, whether it's the DC-10 or the 412, I haven't finalized whether or not the 412 is going to keep the water effect that I have on it or not. I may leave it, or I may not. I may just leave a section in the README of where to find it. That's probably what I'll do, just to avoid any issues with the original author of that. But like I was saying, any of the retardant effects I do keep with these, you can obviously deactivate them by putting backslashes in the aircraft CFG file and saving it before getting into Firefighter X, and then obviously using Firefighter X's built-in retardant effects would simply replace those. And then if you want to fly it around afterwards, you just obviously go back into the aircraft CFG and remove those dashes that you put in there to deactivate the retardant effect. So that's really kind of just a quick update on the DC-10s. Like I said, there's not really a whole lot left to do with these. So the next aircraft we're going to jump into is obviously the Bell 412s, and then this update will be pretty much taken care of. And now we're in the Bell 412. You can see here this is the San Diego Fire livery. Great looking livery in my opinion. Probably one of the best. But anyway, so we'll get to some of these variations and some of the changes that I made on them. Really, they're just tiny modifications, but they're enough to warrant different models. So on this particular version, I added, all the versions now have skid steps on the side of the fuselage. I've added those. They all now have a underside mirror, as well as some type of additional attachment. So for the San Diego Fire, they have the FLIR pod in the nose. So the other models, such as, I will actually jump into the Wildcat helicopters. So as you can see here, the difference between the Wildcat and, say, the San Diego Fire version is the fuselage here is, obviously you see the searchlight is obviously not on this one, but it has the skid steps as well as the radome in the nose. There are certain versions out there that have the radome in the nose, and I wanted to include those because mainly the Australian and Canadian versions have the radome in the nose, and I wanted to, you know, include those as more realistic options. So that's what I did. So essentially the Kestrel and Wildcat helicopters versions have the nose radome and associated accessories, if you will, on the outside of the helicopter. That's mainly kind of the large differences that I added, and the different models of either having one option or not having another option essentially is why I went from 2 models to 5. So all the versions are going to have a belly tank, and they all have you know, the skid steps on the side. All versions have those. It's just going to be the little minor changes to the model that I basically added. So, you know, as far as those go, that's kind of the main things that I added. Last night I also added new views. So as you can see here, some of the views that it's going to come with. There are some I'm still working on, which are basically virtual cockpit versions. You know, basically a left window. You know, you can use for hovering, looking down, hovering, for, you know, snorkel, picking up from snorkel. This is another one that I still haven't positioned quite right yet. And then this was supposed to be a top-down view for the snorkel, but I still need to adjust the points to make this more accurate. So you can either, the way I want this positioned is, it is looking down right now, but it's actually looking backwards more than I want it to. My point is to basically look out the side, the right side of the helicopter, and so you can basically use it as a hoist view if you're saying simulating a hoist rescue operation, or you can also use it for the snorkel view, because the snorkel is also on the right side of the helo. So that's kind of what I'm working with right now in terms of external views as well. I might add a couple of other ones, but I really think that's probably it. And then, like I said, what I mentioned with the P2 is that I'm probably am just going to take the water effect off of this and then just tell people where to get it in a README file. So, but in terms of, you know, the updates for this particular episode, that's really it. I wanted to try and keep the updates a little bit shorter, because I know people aren't going to want to sit there and listen to me ramble on about this stuff for, you know, some of these videos I think were an hour long. So I want to try and get more to the point and not ramble so much in terms of the updates. You know, if I do have other things to talk about, you know, in terms of airtanker stuff or development, then I will, but I'll probably warn people at the beginning of the videos, hey, this video is going to be long if you don't already see the runtime of the video. So yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to give everyone a quick update on these, and thanks for watching. Tune into the next one.